Hello everyone, I'm Runal Mehta and welcome back to our channel digiate.com. We are your digital aid and we provide free courses on the subjects of business and marketing.
Now let's start with the 4 pillars of branding that will ensure that your brand is timeless. The 4-pillar of branding model, also known as the brand Asset Valuator Model, was originally developed by Young and Rubicon. Now it is currently supervised and expanded by BAV Consulting. The BAV model illustrates how brands evolve over time, how they could land in trouble, and how they can recover from the damage. BAV studies brands on 4 fundamental measures of equity or pillars that we'll see in the video. Since 1993, BAV has conducted research consulting on about 800,000 customers in 51 countries, allowing BAV to truly follow the global brand trends. Now let's look at the 4 pillars of branding. These are 4 main pillars of brand health in the BAV model. Each pillar, as you can see, is acquired from various measures that link different aspects of customers' brand perceptions. The 4 pillars track down the progression of a brand's development. And the 4 pillars are energize differentiation, relevance, esteem, and knowledge. Let's understand the meaning of these briefly. Starting with the first one, energize differentiation. It measures the extent to which a brand creates differentiation from the rest. It is an important condition to ensure a profitable brand building. Next is how relevant is a brand. It measures the relevance of a brand with regards to consumers and the overall scope of the brand's potential franchise or penetration. Next, esteem. It measures how much a brand is appreciated and respected. A good brand esteem results to increase customer loyalty. And finally comes the pillar of knowledge. It measures to what degree the consumers are familiar with the brand. It is basically related to how noticeable a brand is. So today, if brands are performing well in the market, they are known all across the world and the company is profitable, that means that particular brand is high on all those 4 pillars. Now, if there is some change in terms of the length of the pillar, then the brand is suffering in the market. Moving on to the power grid model. Now, the 4 pillars of branding will be plotted on a power grid in order to understand whether the brands are growing, declining, or they are being phased out. And that will happen on the 4 pillars. The BAV model integrates 2 macro dimensions into a visual representation known as a power grid. The 2 dimensions are, first, that is brand strength, which is on the y-axis, which includes the 2 pillars of differentiation and relevance. So the higher they go on this axis, that means differentiation and relevance of the brand is increasing. Same way, on the x-axis, you have the brand stature, which includes the esteem, that is the respect commanded by the brand, and the knowledge people have about the brand, which is on the x-axis. Depending on where the brand is placed on this particular axis, the esteem and knowledge of the brand will increase. Now, the final structure looks like this. If you see, there are 4 pillars in every quadrant, but the size of the pillar differs in every quadrant. Why and how is what we're going to see in the video now going forward. So let's start plotting these pillars on this particular quadrant. Starting with the first one, that is the bottom left quadrant. Now, if you look at the size of the pillars, they change going in every quadrant. But in this quadrant, that is the bottom left quadrant that we can see on the screen, the differentiation pillar is higher, followed by the others. The rationale is pretty simple. Let's see how. Brands that come to life, or the ones that are launched, start with the lower left quadrant, where they first fight to develop uniqueness and serve a purpose of need. That is, they first need to be different and relevant and establish the reason for being. So whenever a brand comes into the market, the first thing customers ask is how different is the brand? That's the reason the first thing the brand needs to do is be different. Then comes the relevance, then people start respecting the brand, and then comes the knowledge. A brand needs to show its differentiation in comparison from other brands. Once the brand gains some kind of differentiation, it moves to the top left quadrant, and as you can see, the differentiation pillar reaches the maximum level, and there is quite amount of growth, relevance pillar along with esteem and knowledge. The rationale is simple. In this quadrant, brands have significant differentiation and started to gain relevance. According to the leading brands that are in the next upper right quadrant, new potential competitors could possibly emerge from here. So logically, if you go to the quadrant on the right now, on the next slide, you will see the pillars have increased in terms of their size. But in this quadrant, the logic is pretty simple. The brand is different. It is gaining relevance. People have started noticing it. And ultimately, it will get some esteem and knowledge. The example here could be Tesla, which is quite different in the market. It has some amount of relevance, esteem and knowledge. And the athletic sportswear brand called Gymshark. They haven't reached their full potential yet. Now from this quadrant where on, we move on to the right quadrant, the top right quadrant. In this, there are 2 types of brands. One is the leadership brand. When I say leadership, that means the brand is the leader in their market. they are high on all the 4 pillars almost. The brand is different, it commands relevance, people respect the brand as an esteem, and they have knowledge about it. The brand is famous. The leadership quadrant is dominated by brand leaders. Those companies that have high levels of both brand strength and brand stature. Makes a lot of sense because the moment you move to the top right quadrant, your stature that is on the x-axis and your strength on the y-axis is at the maximum. So brands score high on all the 4 pillars. Brands that are old or relatively new can fall in this quadrant. Doesn't matter how old or new the brand is. That means brand leadership is a function of the pillar measures and not of the longevity of the brand's existence. We will see how. When properly managed, a brand can build and maintain a leadership position for an indefinite time. Now, if you look at the examples that I'm going to mention here, you realize that some brands are probably 10-year-old or 20-year-old. Some brands are there for 50 years. The point is, to maintain leadership, you need to be different. You need to be still relevant. Customers should respect you, esteem, and knowledge. So the examples that we've included here are of Google, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Red Bull, Johnson & Johnson that's been there for decades, Walmart that has been for decades, Amazon being relatively new, Cadbury being there for decades, Nike about 3 decades, Gymshark and Starbucks. The rationale is pretty simple. They are leaders in their particular space. Why Gymshark here? Because Gymshark is moving into this category and making a name of itself among all the other athletic brands that are available in the market, right? So yes, now from here on, if the brand kind of slips as far as differentiation is concerned and people think, it's just a mass market brand, we have the second type, that is mass market, right? Now, if you look at the pillars here, the differentiation pillar has reduced, whereas the knowledge figure is on the top. So logic is pretty simple, that people around the world know your brand, but differentiation has kind of gone off. We'll see some examples here. Now, mass market brands score high on 3 pillars, except for the pillar of energized differentiation, as you can see, which starts to decline. A decline in brand equity is not inevitable. Brands for whom differentiation, that is their strength, has declined can be seen in this very quadrant. We can see this. Brands whose strength has started to fall below the level of stature display the first signs of weakness. So if you see very clearly, in terms of stature, esteem has reduced as far as for the mass market brand is concerned. The examples of brands are Snapchat, Facebook, Netflix, Pepsi, Coca-Cola and McDonald's. All mass market brands. They don't have much of differentiation because there is competitor breathing down their neck. Why I have mentioned Netflix? Netflix initially was a company that made all the difference by getting all the streaming services up and running. But then you have Amazon Prime, you have Disney Hotstar, you have Apple TV Plus, you have Hulu breathing down its neck. So the differentiation wears off. Now from here on is the last quadrant. And logically, as you can see, there'll be more decrease in differentiation. There'll be decrease in relevance and esteem because that's how the life of a brand moves on. So if you look at the pillars now, people around the world will have knowledge about your brand. But esteem and respect will be less compared to earlier quadrants. Relevance will decrease and people won't find any differentiation on your products. That means your product will eventually phase out or not make good money. In this quadrant, brands fail to maintain their brand strength, that is relevance and differentiation begins to fade out and move down into the bottom right quadrant. These brands become inadequate, not in front of the existing competitors, but also to the negative effects of discount price brands, smaller brands, especially private labels. They're eventually phased out or just survive in the market, burning more cash for the company. The examples of company that reached this quadrant eventually were Nokia and BlackBerry. And if you can recall, at one point of time, they were leaders in their respective segments in the smartphone business, right? But as you look at the quadrant, the yellow pillar, that is the knowledge figure is there, that is on the highest. That means we do have good knowledge about Nokia and BlackBerry. But as far as the first pillar is concerned, differentiation, we don't find anything different in them. And that's the reason you have the likes of the iPhone and Samsung dominating the market. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on the 4 pillars of branding model. These are the list of sources and links referred to for our content in the video. Thank you and stay tuned for more videos.